The High Court in Pretoria has ordered President Cyril Ramaphosa to appoint an investigative committee to probe and provide a report into allegations that the identification of King Zulu was not done in terms of customary laws and customs. This is contained in the judgment handed down yesterday. The court has ruled that President Cyril Ramaphosa's recognition of King Zulu KwaZulu-Natal in terms of Leadership Act is unlawful and invalid. However, the court says the judgment is not about who should be King of AmaZulu. The court application was brought by Prince Smakade Zulu, the late King Goodwill Zwelithini's firstborn son. Smakade had argued that President Cyril Ramaphosa acted hastily in certifying his half-brother as the Zulu king. Some analysts have expressed their surprise at the ruling.
It was surprising in the manner in which the court might have interpreted in the type of the order that is. But the court, I think, is erring on the correct side or the right side in saying, well, we are going to say there must have been an investigation that ought to have been made. The complaint which has been submitted to the office of the president must be taken as a valid complaint. We're not going to declare anyone to be the king, the Isilo, or not to be Isilo, but what we're going to do is to direct the president to cause or to make sure that there's an investigation which is going to properly investigate the matter, just to ensure that everything goes in accordance with customary law and all the other applicable laws that are there. So for now, it is that investigation team which is going to take center stage and determine whether the correct customs and rituals were really followed in the appointment of Isilo Mrs. Traditionally, Isilo has certain ways in which it's been identified, and the act is quite clear in terms of saying the customs and the rituals which are supposed to be followed must be followed to the T. Meanwhile, the president merely issues a recognition certificate upon the advice of the Zulu family or the Zulu nation, advising him that, Mr. President, we have sat down as a family. This is the person that you've been able to identify. So this is the person that you must issue the recognition certificate to. So what this judgment is focusing really on is to say, from the side of the president, on the practical basis, legislative compliance basis, Mr. President, this is what has ought to have taken place. And we're not going to delve into the customs that need to be investigated, which for me, I think is the real point of contention or the merits of the matter as to who exactly should be sitting in that particular seat. And that, I think, is going to be determined by the investigative team if it gets to that particular stage.
Joining us to talk more on this issue is the history lecturer at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Kuthula Twala. Hi, Mr. Twala, and welcome to our program, Pitso. Can you first please just break down the judgment for us? What does this mean?
Good morning, Pitso. Good morning to the viewers. Thanks for having me. You are asking me to break down the verdict. I think clearly it's not about who should be in the throne currently. That's what it says. Secondly, it calls for the president to investigate if the proper protocols were followed in terms of the existing laws that govern the identification of the monarch. But then it speaks something about the existence of the laws in our country, which laws are largely based on Dutch Roman laws, to an extent that they also affect the way African ways of doing things have been handled. But as a constitutional democracy that also has accepted the existence of such laws, it has to be followed.
Mr. Twala, did this ruling take you by surprise?
Come again?
Did this ruling take you by surprise?
Yes, for many, it took many people by surprise. Firstly, due to the fact that what was given to President Cyril Ramaphosa as a name for him to just recognize happened at during the lifetime of the well-known former or the late AmaZulu traditional Prime Minister Mangosuthu Buthelezi, someone who has been a tall figure, who has handled these matters before. Although one would have said that besides that information, the presidency should have taken all steps to ensure that what was on his side was done. It is indeed a surprise in many ways because it also have an impact of eating out or just reversing the might of the Zulu kingdom, as we know the Zulu kingdom historically, and it raises eyes as to how it's going to pan out going forward. But we are indeed surprised. Little of this was expected. AmaZulu as a nation have always made themselves known to rally behind their leader, who is the king. Hence, we have got the names and the praise songs already we do have, even though at this stage it is not yet stated that King Mr. Zulu has been removed from the throne. But yes, indeed, a surprise.
Mr. Twala, will this cause instability to the Zulu monarch, knowing that there's already existing problems?
There is a possibility of problems emanating and sowing divisions, but we have to bear in mind that we are in the 21st century, wherein the issue of the throne is taken as a lucrative institution. Maybe there is an element of that more than anything, but should the processes that President Cyril Ramaphosa will undertake prove the identification of King Mr. as the correct one, we might see such things falling out.
Mr. Tola, this is going to be a very big one, especially for the family. Do you foresee that the family will be united in this particular matter?
Firstly, let us remember that for since time immemorial, there has always been wranglings over the succession of the throne in the Zulu kingdom. That is why we have repeatedly said that there could not have been the Battle of Makongo in 1840 and the Battle of Ndondakusuka in 1856 between King Cetshwayo. But that would not have happened without the divisions, without seeing divisions happening within the Zulu royal house. So today we see it playing itself in the court of laws because of the situation we find ourselves in the current space of things. But divisions, as you ask, yes, they are already there. They will always be there. But Zulu people will be disappointed. Whoever emerged powerful or victorious, the Zulu nation will also have to follow, as was the case historically.
Mr. Twala, what does the AmaZulu nation have to do in the presence of this judgment of understanding who their leaders are? What should they be thinking at this point?
Well, many things come, different things come to different minds. Depends on which angle or which side you want to follow. I've already indicated that currently people are living a type of life where they expect gains. So depending on where you stand, but to an ordinary person who is a pure Zulu and a person who is passionate, who have always seen AmaZulu people being energetic and passionately following their culture and giving respect to the royal house. To those ordinary people who are always singing the praises of the martyrdom of King Cetshwayo, King Shaka, and so forth, because those of us who are aware that when the colonial project was meted against Zulu kings during colonial intrusion, it was the very same kings who stood up and defended the Zulu people. So the prayer of such individuals would be such that the unity and the strength of the Zulu nation be retained post this whole thing.
Mr. Twala, the judgment is not about who should be king of AmaZulu, but can the ruling itself take the nation back to that point?
It's difficult to say because here we are talking about litigation issues, something which most of us are not clued up. Even legal practitioners themselves would await, even after the investigation has been done from the president's side, there could be some challenges. There is a possibility that even the decision by the president could be challenged by the faction that wishes to take over the reign. So should we get to a stage where there is a personal wrangling between one and two, that would also reduce the strength and the rich history of AmaZulu, and thereby spitting to the martyrdom that I've already explained.
Mr. Twala, just the last question before you leave. Can we say that the AmaZulu nation have a king now?
Definitely yes, as it is said, because it does not, the ruling does not dethrone King Misuzulu currently as the sitting king. However, remember that there was a ruling by Judge Matondo, where should maybe if that could be set aside, then effectively the Zulus would remain without a king. But let me not go there because I'll be jumping a gun. Let us allow the processes as outlined in the judgment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Twala, for your time here on Pitso. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah,
That was,
thank you so much.
Thank you. That was Kutula Twala, a history lecturer from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, just having a conversation with us about King Misuzulu Zwelithini. This season is a time when criminals sharpen and refine their operations, taking advantage of the festive mood. The South African police say they are ready to bust crime this festive season. This is based on a statement made by the Minister Begekele to deploy 10,000 more police officers this festive season. For more on this, we are now joined by the SAPS National Spokesperson, Brigadier Athlenda Mate. Hi, Mr. Mate, and welcome to Pitso here on SABC Lehae.
A very good morning and thank you for the opportunity.
Miss Mate, maybe we can just start that during this festive season, it's known that crime stats tend to increase. Would you say the SAPS is ready to prevent and combat criminality in the country at this time?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. Our police officers are more than ready. They are already on the ground. Our national safer festive operations began as early as the 13th of October, and we are already seeing results where more than 75,000 suspects for various crimes ranging from murder, rape, assault, GBH have been arrested. We have so far recovered more than 447 vehicles that were either hijacked or stolen. Our plan is to heighten police visibility. We are already seeing these significant results. We are seeing regular roadblocks, stop and searches, where we are looking for illegal and unwanted firearms. We are looking for drugs. We are looking for undocumented persons. But we are also looking for those wanted suspects that have been on the police radar. Our focus is to get a grip on serious and violent crime, and we are quite pleased with the manner in which these operations are unfolding.
The 2023 project of the 10,000 police recruitment drive is a direct response to the call from His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa. As the SAPS is the recruitment number enough to strengthen police capacity and enhance police visibility?
So absolutely, this week we are witnessing the graduation of 10,000 police officers. And we will see this week alone 8,700 graduate. The remain will graduate next year. So this is the second batch of 10,000 police officers to graduate in a period of 2 years. Last December, we also trained and deployed 10,000 police officers to various police stations across the country. So we do believe that this latest cohort, this new injection, new blood will go a long way in assisting the SAPS in fighting crime, in assisting us to capacitate our police stations where there is a need for more personnel on the ground. So we are going to be utilizing these new police constables that will be graduating as of tomorrow up until Friday to ensure that we heighten police visibility across the country. They will be deployed, as I've indicated, to our police stations, to our visible policing units to ensure that they prevent, combat, and investigate crime.
Ms. Mate, how different are you guys dealing with crime this year and towards the festive seasons?
So absolutely. This year, we are emphasizing and putting our resources and efforts in combating aggravated robberies. So we see a rise in these type of crimes at this time of the year. And that is why we are intensifying our efforts against aggravated robberies, your hijackings, your robbery at your homes, your residential premises, robbery at business premises, your cash and transit heists, your ATM bombings, but also looking at preventing and combating and arresting those that are behind gender-based violence and femicide cases. We are looking at the ongoing kidnapping cases. And what is encouraging is that we do have a dedicated team that is working around the clock to deal with such incidents of kidnappings that we are seeing in the country. So there's a whole lot of crimes that we are looking at holistically. We are also looking at in terms of road safety, because we know this is a busy period in the year where people are traveling. We are also concentrating at the borders, ensuring that illegal migrants or those illegal persons don't enter the country and don't also leave the country. We make sure that we arrest them when we find them and so on.
Ms. Mate, festive season is a period characterized by festivities and increased migrations of people within across the borders. How can you ensure that the safety, how can you ensure the safety of people during the season?
So absolutely, as I've indicated, as the police, we are already on the ground. We are not working alone. We are working together with other law enforcement agencies from local, provincial, and national level, where we are conducting joint operations together so that we conduct these regular roadblocks, these stop and searches, but also trace for wanted suspects. So it's a joint effort, and we are also relying on the community to come on board and work closely with us so that together we can fight crime and ensure that everyone is in the country in a safe and secure environment to enjoy the holiday season. But what is also important is to advise people, everyone, our communities, to be extra vigilant of their surroundings. This is a time when people are most relaxed, but also this is a time when criminals utilize this opportunity to pounce on unsuspecting victims and rob them of their hard-earned money. So people need to be extra vigilant. If you can avoid carrying large sums of money, please do so, and rather EFT and so on. We know that stokvels during this time of the year will be sharing their dividends. If it's possible, do get into a bank and do the necessary transfers. Avoid carrying large sums of money.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mate, for your time here on Pitso. Enjoy the rest of your day. That was Ms. Mate, the spokesperson from SAPS. Now, don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this short break. Welcome back to Pitso here on SABC Lehae. Now, after 333 days and counting, load shedding in 2023 reaches a new record of blackouts in a single year. Although the Minister of Electricity, Hosienzo Ramokgopa, publicly stated that the rumors of stage 8 of load shedding during this festive season are false claims, the country and economy still suffers massive blows due to continuous rolling blackouts. Here to unravel more onto the discussion, we are now joined via Zoom by an energy expert, Mr. Tshepo Khadima. Hi, Mr. Khadima, and a very good morning to you. Welcome to Pitso here on SABC Lehae.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And before we start, I wanted to just also hasten to add my word of condolences to the family of Sahara, and that indeed her life and the memory of her life through music is probably one of God's greatest gifts to us, which her death, untimely death, will never destroy. But condolences to her family.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khadima. There have been a lot of public fears of load shedding stage 8 during this festive season. Perhaps do you think that we might experience a Black Christmas?
Well, the evidence is there for all to see. I mean, right now we are enduring continued rolling blackouts, load shedding, and that is primarily because when we look at Eskom's base load fleet of coal-fired power station, they are continuing to underperform. The energy availability factor remains below 50%. And in order to bring an end to load shedding, they need to increase and improve the energy availability factor by a factor of 50%. That is an impossibility. So the long and short of it is that during this Christmas, we are going to endure continued rolling blackouts. The question is, what effect will that have on businesses, particularly those that are in the retail sector, who at this particular, and also in the restaurant business, who during this festive season is the peak season for them. That's where they are able to make the most of their business. And they are going to be negatively impacted by this rolling blackouts. But yes, of course, this rolling blackouts are going to continue even beyond 2024, unfortunately.
Mr. Khadima, we've seen countries such as Ethiopia investing more into hydro energy. Should this be a call for South Africa to also move slightly away from the coal?
The question should be more of how can we burn the abundant coal resources we have in the most cleanest way? And that would entail deploying clean coal technologies, whereby the emissions, particularly the carbon dioxide, the nitrogen oxide, as well as the sulfur oxides, and as well as other particulate material in terms of ash, that can be reduced by 90%, in the very minimal. And that is the strategy that South Africa is supposed to be taking, because the most responsible energy policy for any developing nation, and even developed nation, must be anchored on 3 pillars. The first pillar is that of dispatchable or reliably dispatchable power, meaning it must be available on demand. Secondly, must be the least cost. And the abundant coal reserves in South Africa give us by far the least cost per kilowatt hour compared to any other nation, whether developing or developed nations. And the third pillar must be that of environmental sustainability. Hence, for the last 8 to 9 years, I have been advocating very strongly that South Africa needs to adopt clean coal technologies to ensure that we can be able to increase the energy security for the nation, because that is the only way that the economy can be able to develop. We are not in the same position that Ethiopia is, for example, of being able to develop hydropower, because South Africa is an arid nation, notwithstanding the recent rains we have seen, but it's an arid country. So we don't have the flexibility that other nations would have. For example, Scandinavian countries, they have deployed large tracts of hydropower, but we don't have that, that benefit. The benefit that we have, which is the most practicable, is coal as well as nuclear. And it's good that the ministerial determination has now been issued to procure 2,500 megawatts of nuclear power. But bear this in mind, that is at least 7 to 8 years away. So in the immediate, we must deploy clean coal technologies, because with clean coal technologies, we can therefore meet our environmental sustainability goals by reducing the emissions by a factor of 90%, but at the same time ensure that there is energy security, that the devastating impact of rolling blackouts is eradicated to zero.
Mr. Khadima, just to bring in more clarity, does Eskom really have an energy crisis, or is it just point-blank political corruption happening within the organization?
No, Eskom is in crisis, but the politicians have made it worse in a number of factors. One of them is the irrational unbundling of Eskom into 3 so-called divisions, which is generation, transmission, and distribution. that is what is going to lead to the premature demise of Eskom. I can assure you of that, without any doubt whatsoever. It's going to lead to increased, more expensive electricity than we've ever had. But at the same time, that electricity will not be available. So that is really the heart of it, that Eskom has been led to an untimely demise, but because of the politicians who take decisions that are completely irrational. And also the advent of the so-called State Asset Management Company, SOC, which is to come into effect in 2024, will make it more problematic in terms of governance of Eskom. So I made a reference the other day that the appointment of Mr. Dan Marukani is not going to make any difference whatsoever, because he is going to be largely a ceremonial CEO. And therefore, we are not going to see the appropriate decisions or a practicable plan being implemented to improve the energy availability factor by 50%, because the transmission company cannot transmit any power which has not been produced. And the so-called private sector or independent power producers, not a single one of them will ever be able to produce baseload power, which is dispatchable, available on demand at the right price. We know, as a matter of fact, right now that diesel costs more than 9 rand a kilowatt hour to produce a unit of electricity, whereas gas, the so-called Kapawa ship, is going to come in at 5 rand 50 cents plus. The wind and solar combined, they are doing at 2 rand 28 cents, whereas coal is producing at 44 cents. The numbers are there for all to see. Why the politicians have decided that they must drive Eskom into a situation whereby it not only has to increase the tariffs, which are exorbitantly high, but at the same time have no money to be able to do appropriate maintenance, refurbishment, as well as improvement of its operations, to the extent that now the energy availability factor is below 50%. This is a catastrophe. Eskom is in a crisis never seen before, and there's no point in politicians continuing to deny it. And it is important that Eskom must have competent people who know what they are doing. And right now, Eskom does not have competent people in leadership, in management. Hence, the energy availability factor has collapsed. Hence, we are seeing continued incidences of equipment failure, which is totally preventable, and yet it's causing harm unknown.
Mr. Khadima, there has been a lot of reports on cable theft cases. Briefly enlighten us with short words on how it affects the country and Eskom as a whole. And also, what are these cables being stolen for?
Okay, in the first instance, the best security guard for a power system, for an electricity system of any country, is a live wire. When the wire is live with electricity, it is the best security guard that money can buy. Therefore, the solution lies in having no load shedding. If there is no load shedding, there will be no incidences of cable theft. But at the same time, both Parliament law enforcement agencies need to do a lot more. Bear this in mind. Copper prices right now are over $8,400 a ton. So the thieves are incentivized, if they know that they can be able to steal copper cables and have no risk of being arrested and jailed, of course, they're then going to take a chance. But when Eskom cannot guarantee us of electricity, it means that itself doesn't have the capacity to protect the critical infrastructure, particularly on the network side, but also in terms of other equipment such as transformers and otherwise. They must just simply increase the energy availability factor by 50% to 75%. If Eskom has got 75% energy availability factor, there will be no load shedding in this country, because demand for electricity is below 30,000 megawatts. And that gives us a chance to arrest the increasing or ever increasing tariffs, and at the same time, give the businesses in this country the opportunity and the capacity to be able to grow and do their business. That is the most critical thing that can be done. Unfortunately, I have to add, Eskom management, the board, the government do not have a plan to increase the energy availability factor by 50%. Hence, I fear the worst, that the grid of this country is going to collapse, because if we stay below 50% energy availability factor, very soon we will not be able to run the diesel generators, which have by and large been assisting in keeping the grid stable, and therefore it's going to be a catastrophe.
Mr. Khadima, we are running out of time, but just before we wrap it up, do you think there's still hope that Eskom will ever recover from its debt and power failure?
Not at all, because of the decisions that have been taken. The irrational unbundling of Eskom has led to its demise. Therefore, there will be no Eskom. I think by the time Mr. Marokani starts his job on April Fool's Day, on the 1st of April 2024, there will be no Eskom, because Eskom, by that time, you've mentioned in your introduction that we've had 333 days of load shedding this year, 2023. That in turn means in revenue losses, Eskom in the current financial year is going to lose no less than 79 billion rand in revenue. I don't know how Eskom can survive having lost 79 billion rand in revenue.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tshepo Khadima, for your time here on Pitso. Enjoy the rest of your day.